All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed right around this world of ours on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, the address is very simple, xzone@classic1220.ca. This first hour tonight, X Zone Nation, I have a gentleman that I have the pleasure of calling a friend. His name is Mark Anthony. He is the JD Psychic Explorer. Now, he's a fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is an Oxford-educated attorney who has tried over 100 jury trials and is licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. He was named Best Psychic Medium in the OMMIE Awards, sponsored by OM Times and iSpirit Media. Joining me now from Florida, where it's nice and warm compared to this place where we call home, is Mark Anthony. Mark, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be here.
Mark, last time you and I talked, you had just won a number of awards. Any more awards in the offing?
Actually, yes. My podcast, it's a live stream show that I do every Thursday, The Psychic in the Doc.
Yeah.
I understand we were informed that it won Best Radio Show 2024 for Best Holistic Life Magazine Awards. And my co-host, Dr. Pat Basili, she's a psychologist, and people call into the show, and I do readings, and she helps them understand what everything means. Plus, we have guests on, and, it's similar to the X Zone, but we're focused, it's a talk show where we engage with the callers. Sure. So it's kind of a bit of a self-help show. And we were really, really stunned and very honored that just came out of the blue. So we've got that, and I've got a whole nationwide tour coming up. It'd take half the show just to explain everywhere I'm going to be, Rob. So I'm just going to invite everybody to visit my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. Sign up for my newsletter at afterlifefrequency.com, which is just like my latest book, The Afterlife Frequency.
Now, excuse me, Mark. What is the name of your latest book? Because I know you've got a number of books out there.
Yeah, the latest book is The Afterlife Frequency, and the subtitle is The Scientific Proof of Spiritual Contact and How That Awareness Will Change Your Life. And I've been very honored because it's won 3 major awards. It was actually up for a Pulitzer Prize, which is an honor in and of itself.
Sure is, yeah.
But it won the cover award for Best Book on Reincarnation, Death, Dying, and Grieving. It won the OM Times Metaphysical Book of the Year, and it won the Best Holistic Life Magazine Inspirational Book of the Year. Mm-hmm. And it's still, the sales are going strong. It's even picking up even greater popularity, even more so than when it first came out. So it's been quite an honor to everything that's happened with the Afterlife.
Well, You've been working hard at it for years, Mark. So if anybody deserves these awards, you certainly do, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's great being on the X Zone. And, I remember when I was first on the X Zone, God, this had to be like 12 years ago or something. And, you were already a force in the industry then, but it's just how X Zone has just exploded worldwide. I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. There's two factors in that equation. The factor of our guests like yourself, and then the many listeners that we've had over the past 33 years that have stuck with this show. So thank you to everyone. Mark, when you and I first started, you were the psychic lawyer. Now,
Yes.
you're known as the psychic explorer. What happened to change it?
Well, actually, it hasn't changed. It was modified.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, let me explain. My brand is Mark Anthony JD Psychic Explorer. JD is my law degree, Juris Doctor. So what happened, Rob, is I was at a conference in New York City probably about 15 years ago, and some reporters found out that I was both an attorney and a psychic medium. So they started calling me the psychic lawyer, which is great, because it got me a lot of attention. And it's true, I'm a psychic and a lawyer.
Right.
But I've appeared on a number of shows, the X Zone being one of them, and others where I discuss various aspects of spirit contact, supernatural phenomenon, and ancient mysteries. And my work with ancient mysteries and supernatural phenomenon's taken me all over the world. And a couple other media outlets started calling me the Psychic Explorer. So we thought, let's just condense everything. Mark Anthony, JD, that's my law degree, Psychic Explorer, and bada bing, bada boom, there it is.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is, yes, history. I like to joke with people. I'm the most famous person nobody's heard of.
I know different, Mark. I know different. Listen, it seems that reincarnation is a big topic these days. When you and I started all those years ago, it was just starting to come to the surface. And yet now, it's a big topic. Why is that?
It's because it's come out of the fringe. It's come out of the X Zone, if you will. So I love the name of this show, the X Zone, because X Zone means a lot of things.
Yeah.
It is the fringe elements, the twilight, the gray area. And, traditionally, when people think of reincarnation, they think of Hinduism, they think of India.
Yes.
And, there's Hinduism, but there's also Jainism, Sikhism, and Buddhism, which all originated in India and are still practiced there. And people tend to think that reincarnation is simply an Eastern belief. But according to Pew Research and Ipsos, which is another organization that studies people's beliefs, 51% of the people in the world, Rob, believe in reincarnation. And I don't know what the number is in Canada, but in the United States, that includes 33% of Americans believe in reincarnation.
I would have to go with that number as well up here.
Yeah, I would believe so, because Canada, the Canadians that I interact with and have known tend to be very open-minded. Mm-hmm. And what it shows us is that as people open their minds and they start to find that traditional dogmatic religions, they think reject reincarnation, but they actually don't. We can talk about that. But also, there are now so many documented cases of reincarnation. And so in the 20th century, reincarnation was still looked at. I mean, you think of like Ravi Shankar and George Harrison of the Beatles, and then superstar Shirley MacLaine, the living icon. She went public. She was the first major mainstream celebrity to go public with her beliefs in reincarnation back in the 1980s and 1990s. And she was kind of vilified for it. But on the other hand, a lot of people started stepping forward saying, I believe in this too, because I have these memories. And now that the scientific method has been applied to the analysis of reincarnation, Rob, it really is becoming more and more accepted and openly discussed.
Mark, have you been reincarnated? I
would say unequivocally, yes.
Do you have any recall about your past lives?
I do. I have. There are symptoms, I think you could call them, natural talents that come to you, an association with certain time periods and cultures. There can be phobias that you don't know why you have these. And long story short, and it's funny, nobody's ever really asked me this before in an interview, but you remember the late, great Sylvia Browne.
I sure do,
remember her?
Yes,
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody in this field, Sylvia Browne was a world-famous psychic medium, very controversial, but, it brought her a lot of publicity. And I was actually at a seminar that she was doing, and she was talking about reincarnation, and we did a past life regression. And a past life regression is a very fascinating thing because it can be done through a hypnotherapist who will hypnotize you to take you back to a prior life. And the interesting thing about PLR, past life regression, Rob, is that it's used by psychologists to treat phobias and sources of pain that don't have any objective basis. And the objective there is that you go into a prior life to find out, like, oh, you're afraid of the water and maybe you drowned in a prior life, or what have you. But the American Psychological Association and the American Psychiatric Association have a very paradoxical view on past life regression therapy, because on one hand they say it has therapeutic value, on the other hand they reject it as evidence of reincarnation. Because what happens is when people engage in PLR, they many times begin to remember prior lives. So to answer your question, during a past life regression meditation, I saw myself as a little boy, and I was with all these other little boys, and we were splashing around in this big stone room in water. It was like kind of like a public bath, and there were these very pronounced stone arches all around the place. I could even smell the water, and like we were all having fun, and it was all kind of, the kids, I was probably like 5 or 6 years old maybe, and I kept hearing the name Narbo, Narbo. I kept hearing Narbo, and then it progressed a bit further to where I was then about 21 years old.
Mark, we're going to have a bit of a cliffhanger here. I've got to take a break. Exxon Nation, my guest this hour is Mark Anthony, JD Psychic Explorer / Psychic Lawyer, Psychic Explorer. He's just a great guy. Just call him Mark. And his website is afterlifefrequency.com. That's www.afterlifefrequency.com. And Mark and I will be back on the other side of this very short break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, on the, we're on the X Zone Broadcast Network. We're on other networks, but our mainstay is Classic 1220, www.classic1220.com. We'll be back on the other side of this. Classic1220.ca, my producer corrected me. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Some people call me a bad apple. Well, I may be bruised, but I still taste sweet. Some people call me a bad apple, but I may be the sweetest apple on the tree.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. You're listening to us on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. My guest this hour is Mark Anthony, JD Psychic Explorer / Psychic Lawyer, and his website is afterlifefrequency.com. Now, before we went to the break, Mark, you were telling us about this possible past life that you had, and you were playing in the water?
Yeah, I was doing Sylvia Browne, the great psychic medium. She was conducting a seminar and leading a guided meditation where we went into a prior lifetime. And I saw myself playing in this water. It was like a public bath with these big stone arches. And there was a group of boys about my age. We're all about 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. And then I saw in that same lifetime, I was about 21 years old, and I was very, very ill. In fact, I was dying. I had this horrible lung disease, and I recognized 3 siblings and a woman that was my mother. And the interesting thing is the woman that was my mother in that lifetime felt like the mother that I had in this lifetime. She looked different in this meditation. And I saw my sister, but the other 2 siblings, I didn't really know who they were. And in this life, I only have 2 siblings, not 3. Mm-hmm. And basically, I died of could have been the flu, could have been tuberculosis, it could have been pneumonia. And it was kind of very unsettling. Now, that's interesting and all, but after the seminar, when I was back home, I kept hearing the name Narbo, and I'm like, what the heck is Narbo? And so I started doing internet searches, and lo and behold, Rob, in what is now southern France, during the Roman Empire, in southern France, there was a Roman town, Narbo. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So I started looking at pictures of it, and my heart almost stopped when I saw the public baths, which are in ruins now. But because in the meditation, the arches around the public baths and the baths themselves were intact and perfect. But nowadays, the arches are still there, but they're all cracked and broken, and the roof isn't there. So, I don't want to say, oh, my God, I definitely lived them, but, oh, my God, I think I did, because why would I? First off, I had no idea that Narbo even existed. Secondly, much less that they had public baths with these arches. And third, why would I see them perfectly intact? And the other thing that's interesting, and we can talk about a case study in a second, how I died at age 21 of a terrible lung infection. Well, back during the Roman Empire, the life expectancy of most people was only 28 years old. Also, when I was in my early 20s, I used to get horrible lung infections. I mean, I went to every doctor under the sun, and they kept saying, you're a perfectly healthy young man, there's nothing wrong with you. And it was like I had to work through that. And so a lot of times with past life regression therapy, that's the point of it. Go in and find out, why did I get all those lung infections when I was in my early 20s? And several times I had to be hospitalized with these terrible pneumonias. And then suddenly one day they just went away. So I find that interesting. Whereas I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Robert Snow. And Robert Snow did not believe in reincarnation at all, Rob. He's retired now. He was an Indianapolis Police Department captain and the captain in charge of homicide investigations. And he grew up in the American Midwest in Indiana as a conservative Methodist, did not believe in reincarnation until while working on a case, he encountered a psychologist who did PLR, past life regression therapy. Long story short, he said, that's just a bunch of goofy people trying to pass off their hang-ups and problems on somebody in another lifetime. I mean, that's what he said. And it was, he's a great guy and it's really funny. Well, he did PLR and hit upon 3 lifetimes, one of which he was a woman. Now, that's certainly not what this big bruiser, tough guy cop was expecting. But the thing that really floored him, it was in his quote-unquote most recent lifetime. He said he was walking on these cobblestone streets and saw horses and buggies, realizing it was the late 1800s. Mm-hmm. And next thing he realized, he was painting a portrait, that he was an artist, and he was painting a portrait, get this, of a hunchback woman. And he's thinking, I really hate painting portraits, but I need the money. Then he kept getting this thing about France. He felt that he was in France, mm-hmm. and he felt then that he died somewhere else in a big city. He comes out of this very intrigued and wanted to do more. So he went through several PLR sessions and started compiling very meticulous notes. Well, he wanted to find out, he searched all these art books. And when this happened, it was in 1992, and the internet didn't become accessible until 1993. So in 92, he went through every art book, every library, looking for hunchback woman, portraits, couldn't find anything. So he put it on the back burner, and then he and his wife went on a vacation to New Orleans. They'd never been there before. He said, so here we are in the French Quarter on Royal Street, and then we're looking in these art galleries. He goes, all of a sudden, he goes, oh, dear God. He came, Rob. He walked into this one gallery, and there on an easel was the portrait of the hunchback woman. And he said he recognized every brushstroke, and he asked the gallery owner, he goes, who painted this? And the gallery owner was looking, he goes, some obscure artist in the late 19th century, J. Carroll Beckwith. And so now that he had a name, he traced J. Carroll Beckwith to the National Art Institute in New York City and found his diaries on microfilm, 17,000 pages. And Robert said, yeah, apparently my prior incarnation was just as meticulous as I was. Long story short, everything that he found in these diaries was verified by what he got in his PLR. And J. Carroll Beckwith wasn't famous, painted no masterpieces, generally did portraits. So a lot of people that I encounter, I mean, I've encountered people that said they used to be Anne Boleyn. I encountered this one guy that thinks he was St. Peter, and his friend, this girl, was Mary Magdalene. Yep. I've encountered people that think they're Cleopatra, and all these people always think that they're kings and queens and famous and saints and all this. But why would he think that he was an obscure, unknown artist instead of saying, oh, I was Michelangelo or I was, Monet? And so I think that that's very interesting. It lends to the authenticity.
Yes.
Because it'd be easy to say, oh, I mean, it's so funny. I was on another show and we were talking about reincarnation. This woman called in and says, I was Cleopatra. and I'm a bit of a history buff. And I said, well, which one? She goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, there were 7 Queen Cleopatras. I said the Elizabeth Taylor one, the one, the one that we all tend to think of was known as Cleopatra the 7th. But there were 6 other Queen Cleopatras. And she's like, oh.
Yeah. No, the police officer's account, in my opinion, has a lot of credibility because, number one, he didn't claim to be somebody famous. Like you said, he could have. And the fact that he actually went looking for the hunchback lady, he took his time and really tried hard, and it just happened to fall. Coincidence? I don't know, Mark. But
yeah, synchronicity. I believe in synchronicity. And here's the other thing. How many portraits of hunchback women can there be? And I'm not trying to be facetious. I mean, if you said, oh, I was painting a beautiful girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. Well, God, how many portraits are those?
Tons.
But painting a portrait of a hunchback woman,
yeah,
and then he sees it. And get this. When he was researching J. Carroll Beckwith, who supposedly it was him in a prior lifetime, he spent a lot of time in France. Okay, and that came through in his PLR. But he felt that he died somewhere else in a big city. J. Carroll Beckwith died in New York City. So he was an American artist, spent a lot of his time in France, I guess, doing portrait work there, then came back to the States and was working in New York City. And then he died, I think it was in 1917. And so, in the 1990s, Captain Snow is finding all this out. And this is just astonishing him. He said, Mark, I'm a Methodist. He said, we don't believe this. He said, I grew up and we never talked about reincarnation in church. And then I go through this and the way he described his PLR, and I would describe it the same way. It's kind of like being on a theme park ride. It's like when I was seeing myself as a little boy and then a young man dying, and the way he described his life, it's like you can see it, smell it, hear it, taste it. It's like you're on a ride going by what's happening. So you're part of it, but you're sort of this objective observer, but you can also feel what they're experiencing. Like I remember the feeling of splashing in the water, and the water was a tepid, warm. It felt really good, and I could smell the water. And obviously, the Romans didn't have chlorine, so it smelled like fresh water. And then the dying, I mean, it felt like dying of pneumonia. So mine, I haven't spent a lot of time going to Narbo, but I've done other past life regressions and keyed in on certain time periods and things that I've always had a fascination with since I've been a child. And now there's thousands of documented cases of reincarnation. Back in the 1960s, Dr. Ian Stevenson of the University of Virginia founded the Department of Perceptual Studies. And so what he did, Rob, was he began to apply the scientific method of objective analysis and focused on children who remembered reincarnation from an early age. And he documented over 2,500 cases.
Unreal.
And yeah, just really fascinating stuff.
Mark, stand by. My friend, you and I have to take our break at the bottom of the hour. And Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Mark Anthony, JD Psychic Explorer / psychic lawyer. And his website is afterlifefrequency.com. And Mark and I will be back on the other side of this break. But if you'd like to send me an email, share your experience with us about your past lives, and we'll certainly make sure Mark gets a copy, because this guy is always interested in whatever he talks about. And I'll tell you something, and after knowing Mark the number of years that I have, man, he does what he says he does. He walks the walk, he talks the talk, and he's somebody who, I don't know, he just abounds with credibility. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And welcome back. This is the X, and I'm Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on Classic 1220, and around the world on your hometown Classic 1220 website at www.classic1220.ca. Mark Anthony is our special guest this hour. He is JD Psychic Explorer / psychic lawyer. His website, afterlifefrequency.com. Mark, if somebody was to ask you your definition of the word reincarnation, what would it be?
It means that we lead a succession of lifetimes. In other words, reincarnation comes from Latin, meaning in the flesh again. Because like the word carnivore, that means, carn means flesh. Reincarnation means entering the flesh again. And so reincarnation means that after each biologic death, our consciousness survives that and then is able to return in a new body. To make it easy, think of your body like a car.
Okay.
And, you're not the car, but you're in the car. And when the car breaks down and no longer functions, you get out of the car and then you get another car. And it's the same thing in my book, The Afterlife Frequency, which actually won the Coalition of Visionary Resources Award for Best Book on Reincarnation. Not so much because I go into reincarnation case studies. I do that in my book, Evidence of Eternity, but because of my electromagnetic soul theory. And my electromagnetic soul theory, the EMS, it describes what we really are, which is pure consciousness, meaning a soul, which enshrines our sense of identity, the who and what we are, which is eternal electromagnetic energy, because we know from the laws of physics, energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. It appears, based on all the studies of consciousness, that the brain merely hosts consciousness. It doesn't create it. I mean, essentially, the brain is a carbon-12 resonator in salt water, yet it is only 2% of the body's weight, yet it uses over 20% of the body's energy. And so my belief and my theory, which a number of scientists have accepted and are using the term EMS, electromagnetic soul, is that the brain is basically like a computer hard drive. Our computers didn't create the programs on it, they merely host it. And so when those hard drives crash, in other words, when our brain, our body dies, that information gets uploaded. And so I believe that the electromagnetic soul theory also explains reincarnation. So your EMS in your body, you die, the EMS then leaves this dimension and it's between dimensions, or it goes to the other side dimension, but then it returns and attaches to a new host. And this seems to be in cooperation. It resonates with the current theories on survival of consciousness and reincarnation.
So, Mark, is the consciousness what we call the soul?
Yes, that's how I term it. The solar spirit is the term used in faith. In different religions, they call the soul and the spirit. I use them interchangeably. In science and psychology, they refer to this as consciousness. So consciousness and the soul and the spirit, in my opinion, are the same thing. There are people who will disagree, but that's their opinion.
Sure.
But it's the who and what we are. That's what we are. That is a spirit. And look, I'm a psychic medium. I communicate with spirits pretty much every day, and I can't make up the stuff that's coming through. I mean, spirits bring up things that I have no idea what it is, and the recipient is like, oh my God, I know exactly what that is. And, I've been tested in laboratories, both in the UK, the US, and I'm part of a consciousness and mediumship research project currently with the University of Arizona. And it's really fun working with scientists who, there's no skepticism there. What they want to do is measure the accuracy. And their conclusions are, man, this guy can't be making this stuff up.
Let me ask you this, Mark. We know what happens with energy when it leaves our body. But where does it all start?
That is the question, isn't it? But even the laws of physics, the first law of thermodynamics, energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Neither created nor destroyed. And I went to Catholic school, and I consider myself interfaith now. But when you look at pretty much all the religions, say the divine power we call God always was and always will be. And so for thousands of years, people of faith, the Hindus are really, it's really fascinating because I think it was Werner Heisenberg who said, I wish I would have discovered Hinduism earlier because it seems to be in congruity with quantum physics, with the eternal cycle of birth, death, rebirth, once again, the eternal cycle of energy. Well,
or the eternal cycle of Mother Nature. Look at the four seasons. Look at the trees. The evidence is right there.
The evidence is right there, and it's a reoccurring theme.
Right.
And another reoccurring theme is that I find fascinating is there will be a center point with objects orbiting it. Think about on the atomic level.
Yeah.
You have the nucleus with the neutrons and the protons and being orbited by electrons, okay? And then you see our sun and the planets are orbiting it.
Our solar system, yeah.
Yeah, and our galaxy, apparently there is a center point in the galaxy and all the solar systems orbit that. And then it begs the question, galaxies, which are a collection, like an incredible collection of solar systems, are they in turn orbiting something else? So from the cosmic to the subatomic, there appears to be reoccurring behavior patterns. This is simply an observation. I'm not saying that this unlocks the key to understanding the universe or the multiverses, but it is fascinating the way this does appear to be a reoccurring phenomenon from, like I said, the subatomic all the way up to the cosmic and possibly beyond.
Mark, you mentioned briefly God and Christianity. All right, are there any references to reincarnation in the New Testament of the Bible?
There actually is. How much time do we have before the break, Rob?
4 minutes.
Oh, this might take a little bit longer, but I'll do my best.
Oh, no, well, we can have a cliffhanger.
Okay. Matthew 17, Mark 9, Luke 9. There is something known as the Transfiguration, where Jesus takes a select group of his apostles to a mountaintop, and all of a sudden he begins to glow white, and mist forms around them, and then the spirits of Moses and Elijah appear on either side of Jesus. Now, understandably, the disciples are really like overwhelmed by this, and then they vanish. So at the bottom of the mountain, the disciples are like, well, who are you? And Jesus responds, who do they say I am? And so they said, well, some say that you're John the Baptist. Others say that you're Elijah. And in Matthew 17, verses 12 through 13, Jesus replied, Elijah does come, but I tell you, they did not know him, but did to him whatever they pleased. And the disciples then understood he was speaking to them of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was Jesus's first cousin. And people who have, gone to their Sunday school and read their Bible know that John the Baptist was executed by order of Herod Antipas, the king of Judea, the son of the Herod the Great, the one that killed all the infants. Now, Jesus said Elijah's come back, but basically he was John the Baptist, and Elijah lived 800 years before Jesus and his first cousin, John the Baptist. So progressive Christian scholars, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and reincarnation scholars have really zeroed in on this particular passage, and we believe that this is a reference to reincarnation in the New Testament that wasn't edited out.
It certainly makes sense.
It does, because why would Jesus say Elijah's already come back, but he appeared in the form of John the Baptist? And Jesus was a smart guy. I mean, I'm going to talk about an understatement. He knew that Elijah had lived 8 centuries earlier.
Mark, somebody asked you to do a medium session with them. Is it possible that when you try to connect with the spirit of whoever this person wants you to connect with, that this person or this spirit has been reincarnated? And if it has, can you still connect with that spirit?
Yes. And I know we're coming up on a break. That would be a perfect question to address, because that is going to take a little bit of explanation.
All right, so why don't we hold off that question? I've got a minute before I go to my break. Where can people buy your books, and where are you going to be appearing on this tour that you're going to be taking off on very shortly?
Visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com. I invite everyone to sign up for my newsletter. I've got a couple online light circles in February, limited to 6 people each, where everybody's guaranteed a reading. And then in February, the 23rd, 24th, I'll be in Houston. Then in March, I'm going to be at the Sedona Ascension Retreat. Then in April, at the New Living Expo in San Rafael, California. End of April, Unity of Tampa for the Reincarnation Summit Field Conference by Edgar Cayce Association. And then the following weekend, the first weekend in May, I will be the headliner at the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment Reincarnation Summit at their headquarters in Virginia Beach. And that's just the first half of the year. So I've got a lot of travel going on, and I look forward to seeing people. And I will be speaking also in August at helping parents heal. And it's such an honor to be of service. It's such a beautiful organization.
Let's talk about that
helping parents
organization
heal.
as well when we come back from this break. Exonation Mark Anthony is our special guest. And for all the information about Mark, his book, his appearances, and much more, visit his website, afterlifefrequency.com. This is the X, and I am Rob McConnell. Mark and I will return on the other side of this short break as the X Zone continues, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Mark Anthony is our special guest. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. All right, Mark, my question to you was, if somebody comes to you for a reading as a medium, they want to contact somebody on the other side. By the time they want to contact the person on the other side, this party has already been reincarnated and is someone else, somewhere else. Is it still possible to do a reading?
Yes, it is. And that's because, once again, with my electromagnetic soul theory, our EMS, our soul, is quite a bit more complicated than just being a ball of energy of wafting around in the gray matter we call the brain. It is interconnected energetically with what I call the collective consciousness. In other words, everything's made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, which in turn are comprised of electrons, protons, and neutrons,
Right.
which in turn are composed of the smallest particle, a quantum, which is pure electromagnetic energy. That's where the term quantum physics comes from. Now, the EMS, the electromagnetic soul, yes, it resides in our brain, but it's also a multi-dimensional entity. And its electromagnetic energy connects to the collective consciousness. And so there is a higher self aspect to the EMS. Envision it like this. The higher self aspect of your electromagnetic soul is like the librarian of a library. And your various incarnations are like different books. So let's say there's 3 books that you used to be Benjamin Franklin, because he wrote a book called Autobiography, all right? So he died in 1790. Then in another lifetime, you were Anne Frank, who died, the Diary of Anne Frank, died in 1945. And then currently you've been reincarnated from being Anne Frank to Meghan Markle, who's written about in Prince Harry's book Spare, okay? So let's say that a relative of Anne Frank comes to me and wants to talk to her, but she's been reincarnated as Meghan Markle.
Right.
Okay, but what I'm connecting with is the spirit, the electromagnetic soul, the higher self aspects, because the librarian, if you will, has read all the books and knows all those characters. But the characters in this world don't necessarily know each other, but the higher self aspect of the EMS retains the memories and the personalities of the various incarnations. So even though the person that you want to communicate with has been reincarnated, it is possible to communicate with their spirit to receive information and messages from what you and I would consider to be a prior lifetime. Now, I realize that this is very difficult to comprehend and wrap your mind around, but this also ties into Einstein's theory of relativity and what every reputable quantum physicist since Einstein's time has said is that on that quantum level, on that minute electromagnetic energy subatomic level, time as we know it doesn't exist. So the past, present, and future are all occurring simultaneously. And so the more I work with spirits, the more I'm seeing that quantum physics explains pretty much everything. So, in a nutshell, I hope that answers your question.
Here's another question, and I'm sure it's going to be very simple for you to come up with an answer, but I can't understand how, if we have all these souls or consciousness out there waiting to be reincarnated, and if these consciousness or souls have been around since the beginning of time, wherever that was or whenever that was, how are you able to pinpoint one soul, one unconsciousness, or one way of getting the information from one who's passed from this reality into that reality when somebody asks you to connect with them?
You know, Rob, I think that's one of the best questions anybody has ever asked me. Wow. I love it. It's not me who is summoning a spirit. See, there's a misconception in the psychics that say, I will summon the spirit. No, I don't summon the spirit. The reason people like me are called mediums is we are the medium that the information comes through,
right,
like a radio, a TV, a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
It is the person I'm doing the reading for. They're the one that wants to communicate with their loved ones, so their loved ones are energetically linked to them, and so what their loved ones do is communicate to them through me. So it is, yeah, in a reading, think of a reading like a triangle. At the top of the triangle is the other side, the collective consciousness, right, the spirits. I'm at one bottom end of the triangle, and the client is at the other. And so the spirits, the client brings the spirits to the reading. The spirits communicate with me. I convey the information to the client. So there's this flow between the triangle. Okay. That's why I always tell people, you got to be very careful about not blocking, because some people say no, 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 no to everything when they need to be more open. Okay. Because some of the things that come through may not make sense right away. With time travel and foreseeing the future, I was doing a reading for this woman. Her mother spirit comes through and says, take my 7-year-old grandson to the eye doctor. My client said, I don't have a son, but my sister does, and he's 7, and I'm very close to them. He's been complaining about headaches lately. I said, your mother said, get him to the eye doctor, and now she's giving me the Little Richard song, Tutti Frutti, Ah Rudy. She goes, what? I said, that's what I'm hearing. Long story short, Rob, because I know we're short on time. I get a call from this lady 2 weeks after the reading. She goes, Mark, I told my sister about this, and she said, all right, let's take my 7-year-old son to the eye doctor. Mm-hmm. She said the 3 of us walked into the doctor's office, my sister, 7-year-old nephew, and me, and the second we walked in, on the radio, it starts playing Tutti Frutti, Ah Rudy by Little Richard. Now, spirits are pure electromagnetic energy. There is no time on the quantum electromagnetic level. Radio waves are another form of electromagnetic energy. So the spirit of her mom was able to let everyone know that they were in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. But because what are the odds? What are the odds of me pulling that song out of the ether that's going to play the very second they walk into the doctor's office? And so I think that's a very good example of how spirits are able to perceive what you and I would call the future.
So basically, you're the conduit. You're the amplifier.
I'm the amplifier. Exactly. And it's like, I don't like the word seance. I mean, people get, let's do a seance. Seance is a negative connotation, and I know a lot of people don't care about that, but the work that I do is to bring spirit communication out of the superstition of the 19th and early 20th centuries into the 21st century. And seance, that gives impressions of people with turbans and crystal balls and I will summon the spirits and all that stuff. And there's been a lot of fraud associated with those type of behaviors. So I prefer to label what I do as interdimensional communication, because that's what it is. We're in the material world dimension. The spirits are in the collective consciousness, the afterlife frequency, the other side dimension, and we are communicating between two dimensions.
Mark, is there any connection between what you do and the Akashic Records?
The Akashic Records would be part of the information that is enshrined in the collective consciousness. So the short answer is yes.
Can anyone become a medium?
Everyone is capable of having a psychic or mediumistic experience, because we all have the same anatomy and physiology, but I do not believe that everyone is a medium. As for example, we can all swim, but we can't all be Olympic athletes. We can all do math, but we can't be a Mikio,
right.
Kaku, and so we can all play guitar, but we're all not going to be a Slash. By the way, Exxon, I love the music you guys play. But the thing is, we're just all simply good at doing different things, and I'm very honored that one of the things that I seem to be very good at is mediumistic communication with the other side dimension.
I guess my final question for tonight, Mark, is, and before I get to it, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and sharing your experience and the studies that you've done, the studies that you're part of with the Exo Nation tonight. You are always a welcome guest here, my friend. And
thank you.
If we reincarnate, okay, I shouldn't say if, because I believe we do. Is a future lifetime always a future full-time?
The Hindus believe that what you and I would say is our next lifetime could actually be in the past. And once again, that ties into Einstein's theory of relativity, that on the quantum level, past, present, and future don't exist. And that's a very fascinating concept, because we always think that, we're going to be born in our next life and there'll be flying cars and all this, or, a nuclear apocalypse, which I hope not. But perhaps our next lifetime would be in what you and I would call the 15th century.
So we go back and forward in time, because the past, present, and future are the same.
According to many Hindus, and when you start looking at quantum mechanics, theoretically, that's possible. So in a sense, time travel is possible. It may not be, how we see it in science fiction, where they get into the pod and press the button and, they go back to, watch the Battle of Marathon happening or whatever. Maybe it'll get to that. I don't know. But it does, like I said, according to many Hindu spiritualists, that your next life could be in the past, which would be fascinating. If you're in the same family line, maybe you could do something there that might affect the present or the future. Certainly something to consider. I mean, that's why people tune into the X Zone, is to ponder cool questions like that.
Wow. As always, Mark, time goes by so fast. Again, my many thanks for you coming on the show tonight. Please give my best to Rocky and to Gina. Thank them very much for all their help. And I look forward to the next time we meet here in the X Zone. Because you're traveling so much, my friend, travel safe, and just drop us a line once in a while to let us know you're okay.
Thank you, Rob. I certainly will. And to all the listeners, thank you for tuning into the X-Files. I'm Mark Anthony, and I highly endorse Rob McConnell and the X Zone. Thank you. God bless you. Good night.
Take care, my friend. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break, X-Zone Nation, as the X-Zone continues with hour number 2 of tonight's show. And once again, if you'd like to find out more about Mark Anthony, where he's going to be, how you can contact him, afterlifefrequency.com. This is the X-Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and we'll be back. Whatever you do, don't go away. And my gosh, you're listening to us on Classic 1220.